Hey guys, Fox here, and today we're going to be talking about Week 7 of the 2022 NFL season, and about how this was a massive W for spring football as a whole. To put it simply, in this week, there were 4 players who had very solid to outstanding performances from spring football that have gotten some sort of headlines, well, mainly 3 of them, 2 of them more than the other ones, that have overall been very beneficial. They are slightly more beneficial to the XFL since they are 2 quarterbacks from the XFL, are 2 of the guys, but they overall benefit spring football as a whole, which is very good for the XFL and USFL. So, without further ado, the 4 guys we're talking about are Taylor Bertolet, Cavante Turpin, Taylor Heineke, and PJ Walker. All 4 of these guys played this week, were starters, and had very solid outcomes in their respective games. Now, the first we're going to talk about is the one that had the least overall impact in former New Orleans Breaker, Taylor Bertolet. Bertolet has been, in practice squads for pretty much his whole career, and essentially put this year, he actually has gotten his real shot thanks to his time with the Breakers. He played 2 weeks ago for the Chargers, and he had a perfect, 6 for 6, a total kick game. And then Dustin Hopkins went back to kicking, and then he got hurt, and now Bertolet's back for a few weeks. He started off his comeback for the second time, outstanding. 3 for 3 on extra points. Considering the fact that, we live in a time where extra points are literally not gimmies anymore, it's impressive. It's solid. It's not like the biggest game this week. To put it simply, he didn't have any field goal attempts during the whole game. They didn't try any, and they got a safety at one point. But he went 3 for 3 on his total PATs, so overall, very solid game from him. Now, the next guy I'm talking about is the USFL MVP from 2022 in Cavante Turpin. Turpin only had 2 returns during this game, but one of them ended up being a 53-yard punt return. Put it simply, he's never really had any shot in the NFL. He had some problems in college back in TCU. He never got drafted. And then, got with the Generals, had his outstanding MVP season, and is now legitimately one of the best returners in football. He's, I believe, the only returner to have 2 50-plus yard returns this year. So, a very outstanding player. Considering the fact that he's basically had, been in the news almost every week for having good returns, he's been a very solid player, and it's overall a great thing to see him having success. Now, on to quarterback number 1, we're going to be talking about Taylor Heineke. Taylor Heineke is technically, yes, an XFL player, but you would have never known him from the XFL. He was Jordan Talmadge's backup for the St. Louis Battlehawks, so he never played. But he was basically a full-time starter last year thanks to Ryan Fitzpatrick's injury, and now thanks to another Commander quarterback going down, he is back in the saddle as the team starter. Now, this is one of the 2 huge things that happened this week. He beat Aaron Rodgers in a football game. That's pretty incredible. Now, granted, Aaron Rodgers has been slightly overrated the past couple of years due to just how well his receivers were, well, mainly Davante Adams, and how many people were kind of sleeping on just how big a deal he was to Rodgers. And yes, Rodgers' receiving core this year is basically trash. But to put it simply, for the Commanders' sake, Taylor Heineke, it's not like he's working with, the greatest group of receivers ever. Yes, Curtis Samuel is solid. Yes, Scary Terry is a really, really underrated player. But Brian Robinson Jr., this is his second game back from, getting shot and stuff. But he won. He ended up throwing for 201 yards, 20 for 33 attempts. He had 2 touchdowns and an interception. And he overall did beat Rodgers. And when you compare his stats to Rodgers went 23 for 35 for 194 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So, overall, in terms of the head-to-head, I would say that Rodgers did beat him. I would, just because he didn't have the interception, and he was slightly more accurate. But overall, Heineke was able to do enough to win this game. He got the job done, Rodgers wasn't, and so in the end, Heineke was able to beat him. And then the 4th and final player is PJ Walker, a former, XFL legend. PJ Walker was the outstanding quarterback from the XFL. To put it simply, how much talk we talked about to Jordan Talmadge if you watch all the older, USFL videos. Talmadge was basically viewed as the second best quarterback in that league. It's just that PJ Walker was the man. He was literally the passing yard leader and touchdown leader before the league, folded. And he's been on the Panthers roster literally since that first year ended. And now, thanks to injuries, he's back playing again. And all he did was beat Tom Brady. And yes, just like Rodgers, there is a bit of things to say. Yes, this Buccaneers team really isn't that good. Byron Leftwich and Todd Bowles have been, let's just say, not the best at play calling. And to put it simply, Brady hasn't looked that well and has all his off-the-field issues. But to put it simply, PJ went 16 for 22. That's really, really solid. That's literally over a 70 completion percentage. He had 177 yards and 2 touchdowns to 0 interceptions, and he didn't even run the ball a single time. He was just a very solid passer. Brady, he did have technically some better stats, 32 for 49 for 290, but really, I would say PJ played better. He had 2 touchdowns. He threw the ball with significantly more accuracy, as Brady only threw for 65% compared to PJ's 72%, and he had less yards per completion and way less yards per attempt. And then another thing is that the Panthers did this without Christian McCaffrey. McCaffrey has actually been healthy this year, which is one of the biggest shocks of the whole season, and they just traded him a few days ago. So without the guy that everyone says is their best player, they were still able to go and beat Tampa. Yes, it was at home, but they still beat Tom Brady. Or essentially, as all the headlines have been, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, 2 future first ballot Hall of Famers, lost to XFL quarterbacks this week. To put it simply, all these guys having great performances, especially the quarterbacks, are a huge benefit to spring football. Yes, having the quarterbacks be both from the XFL is a bigger boost to the XFL than the USFL, but to put it simply, they both, no matter what, provide a huge boost to spring football as a whole. When you add in Devontae Turpin becoming the first player of the season with multiple 50-yard returns, you add in Taylor Bertollet continuing to be a very solid kicker for a second game, you overall see that there is talent in spring football, and this is probably going to make a lot of people actually give it more of a shot than they did before, since we're fully seeing these guys do well. Naturally, you still have, the Younghoe Koo guy from the Falcons, who is still their kicker and has been there, since the AAF. But having these guys succeed this week, and all these guys being pretty recent, is a pretty nice thing to have happen, and is definitely a good thing for the league. Or for both the XFL and USFL. Overall, this has been ZomFox. If you enjoy this content and want to be notified since I upload any videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell, and as always, have a great night.